Welcome to our Afluencer Podcast. We have a special health and wellness edition today. Edie Summers is joining us. Edie wears a million different hats, so we were talking about her job titles as we got on the horn here. But Edie is an author of the book, The Memory of Health, A Journey to Well-Being, as well as a wellness coach and a content creator. So we'll talk about all this good stuff with Edie here. Edie's also grown her following to over 40,000 followers active, and she's done so organically. So that's something that we want to pick her brain about as well. Edie, welcome. Thanks for joining us today.
Hi, Brett. Thank you so much for being here and for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's great to chat with you. Let's start with that 40K number, Edie, because I know that's of interest to influencers and brands alike, right? It's tricky, even as you and I were talking beforehand. The internet's very noisy today, right? As we head into 2024, AI just makes it even noisier with people being able to spin out content and you don't know who created it. So that's presents another challenge to people who are looking for health and wellness, especially type of information. But you've been able to break through the noise and do so organically, which is awesome. How have you been able to take us through that journey in terms of going from, hey, I'm starting a Facebook page and there are literally there are 0 followers, and then you follow it and you invite your friends, and now you're at 40,000. So how does that work?
Yeah, sure. I appreciate that question. So I had a friend invite me to Facebook, and in 2009, I knew I was in the process of writing a book. And so I thought, oh, hey, I'll start a page that's related to my book. So I called it Chronic Fatigue Support. And I think that part of it was luck, because I got lucky that that was the niche. I did not realize so many people were looking for answers. So part of it is you have to kind of experiment, and Google can help you with this, like typing in keywords and see what gets a lot of hits. That can help you. Sometimes you'll find niches. I mean, you can guess, but also part of it is just the journey. So I got lucky.
Sorry to interrupt you. You look at the autocomplete then in Google, where you start typing something in and see what Google.
I think Google keywords. I forget where you go.
But there's a keyword tool.
Yeah, I used the keyword tool. Now, I didn't use that. I used it later, and I realized, oh yes, this is a niche. But I did it just because that's something I've experienced, chronic fatigue, but I got lucky that was the name of the page, and honestly, it just started growing on its own, just because that's something that people needed. And then later, years later, I would say it started growing right away because I found a niche. Years later, I added a group, and that did the same thing. It grows on its own, and there's a lot of user-generated content. So I'm very into, I try to answer as many comments as I can. People really like the engagement, and they want to be seen. So I think 2 things are, you want to find a topic that really helps people and means something to them. And whatever your domain is, I feel you can always find that niche topic. It might take you a little bit of time to find it, but honestly, once you find it, it does start growing on its own. And yes, I did put content, of course, on the pages and in the groups, but after a while, it just starts to take off on its own because everyone's talking to one another. I do have a moderator that helps me in my Facebook group, but and I would say that for my page on Facebook, I focused on a lot of, since it's a health topic, I tried to stay in my domain, and I realized also that people were responding to posts about like hope and inspiration. Now that's changed a little bit over time. You do have to listen, right? You have to activate your social listening skills, which part of it can be doing research and seeing what people are talking about in terms of your brand or topics related to your brand, but also on any page that you're trying to grow or social media platform, make sure you're listening to what people are saying on there. And then you can adjust your content based on that, which isn't always fun to do because it's not always what you think the content should be. My content originally started out as more supportive content, and I still have that. And then I realized that there were so many people that were suffering from like very debilitating chronic fatigue that some of the posts became more like comical or just information based, or just really, really empathizing with, this is where you are now. You're in bed, you're exhausted, and everyone has a different journey, and I may not be in the same place as one of my users is, but just being able to give them what they need. And so, again, sometimes that's different. But yeah, I would say that 2009, it took about a year for it to take off. And then I just realized that it was just growing on its own. And I was reaching about 100 likes a day organically. Now it's about 70 likes per day organically. But it just keeps growing on its own. And I advertised briefly for like 3 weeks, and then I realized I probably didn't need it. However, I'm not opposed to advertising, because you want to reach that critical factor where I do think that I have colleagues who run Power Positivity. I don't know if you've heard of that page. It's pretty popular. They were posting lots of content, again, that was very much related to a niche that people found was very relevant, like kind of cultivating a positive mindset. And once they hit 1 million followers, now they're at like 17 million, 22 million. I don't know. You definitely reach an apex where it just takes off. But I think it can happen even at the level that I'm working at now. I have to scramble to keep up with all the comments.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a great point and I found that as well in our startups and journeys and with Afluencer in terms of advertising early, because you have to get the ball rolling. And I mean, in your case, right, you're a 14-year overnight success, and that's right. So took, like you said, a year to get things going, and then at some point the ball does get rolling. And we've seen that on our end. We spent a lot of our early days, and we started in 2019 as a spinoff, and worked the first year or two just recruiting influencers, and that was something we invested heavily in, and advertising as well, right? Because it's like, hey, we come over here, and you got to kind of get people's attention, and then the word starts to spread, and then that's a good thing, right? Because then you can pull back maybe from the paid stuff there, and you move it around. Like in our case, we move it around. So we're like, okay, well, we can now move some of the paid stuff to reaching out and trying to find more brands, right? So we want more health and wellness brands. We're looking for people like Edie, and that's kind of how you move things around. But I think that's a really good point in terms of not being afraid to use the paid stuff first, but you also want to make sure you have that match with the market where you're eventually it all fits and someone's looking for chronic fatigue, right? Like that's a thing. You're not just out there creating something that's important to you, but there's nothing else out there. But in your case, I assume, and maybe you can walk us through this, is that something where people go to their doctor and say, hey, I'm exhausted. And then the doctor just kind of taps on their knee and takes their blood pressure after running them into the back of the office and shrugs and says, okay, I think you're fine, or try this med or something, but it's not really getting at the heart of the problem. So then they're going online, and then they're finding you and your groups.
Exactly. Yeah. Chronic fatigue is a symptom, and it's associated with many conditions. But for people that have what's called chronic fatigue syndrome, it's a syndrome, so they don't know what causes it. And a lot of people that have chronic conditions, whether they have chronic fatigue as a symptom or chronic pain, are not getting necessarily all the help that they need from practitioners. So yes, there are so many people online like looking for answers, but also looking for support. I really do think that a lot of social media is about community. So if you can offer community in some capacity, but yes, people are generally not getting the help that they need just because there are so many conditions that can be hard to treat, even if we do understand what causes them, let alone if we don't understand it. And Bert, I definitely want to clarify that I used advertising after it had already taken off. But I totally agree. In the beginning, I was just hearing this today from one of my favorite writers. What is his name? Hang on. It's Donald Miller. Do you know who he is? No. He wrote You're Building Your Story Brand. And he has a new book coming out called Coach Builder. But he gives great advice on YouTube. And he was saying that in the beginning, when you're building a brand, you have to do about 80% marketing. And I wish I'd heard him say that earlier, because I feel like I was focusing a little too much on content. And then, you definitely want to have a good pulse on who your audience is first, I would say. And that's very much tied into marketing, whether you're doing it organically or paid. So, yeah.
That's a great insight. Yeah. So let's chat about some health and wellness brands that you've worked with or that you're looking to work with, because that's sort of who we see is or comes across, and they'll book time to chat with me, right? And we hop on Zoom and go over the screen share of their website and maybe their Afluencer profile, and they're kind of looking for that marketing, right? They've got the health or wellness solution, and let's say in this case, it's something that can help with chronic fatigue syndrome. We're seeing more and more that the brands are, I think, smart enough to figure out, hey, if I'm going to grow this organically in terms of my own socials, in terms of my own SEO, I need to check back in 2027 once the ball's rolling, right? Because it just takes, it's a multi-year effort. And I tell them, hey, it's not that you shouldn't be doing this stuff now. You should, but to accelerate it, you need to find people like Edie, if she's aligned in terms of being on brand and you're a good mutual match, because you can potentially get in front of her followers and today, right? And that's a way that you can help accelerate and then also get these types of synergies. So what are you seeing from your end, Edie, in terms of working with, because you're kind of like, you're almost like a hybrid, right? You're your own brand, but then you're a content creator and influencer on that front. So how's it looking from your standpoint in terms of working with other brands in the health and well, especially the wellness space around what you do?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah. And I want to definitely want to emphasize that I have a few brands. So I also kind of help people with general well-being. So, but I would say I've worked, so I want to answer your question. First of all, it's harder these days, I find, to find brands. Back in the day, when it was kind of the Wild West on the internet, which it probably still is to some degree, but there was less noise we were talking about. I found it easier. Brands just found me. They would generally DM me on Facebook, or they'd email me, or I used to have a pop-up through VCita, and then they would message me on my website from that. And I would say that primarily, I've actually forgotten some of the brands' names that I've worked with, but one of them was called Lemonade. I don't know if they still exist, but they were a dating app for people with chronic conditions. So that would be an example of something that would work with my chronic fatigue support group. But I've also worked with brands that are just in the wellness space in general. I've done some partnerships with brands with CBD. I'm finding that a little more challenging these days because of all the rules on the internet. So I'm not sure how to navigate that moving forward. But I've worked with a lot of brands, like mostly in the well-being space in general. I would say some of them are devices, and some of them are just like supplements, different supplements. And yeah, most of them reached out to me. But these days, I would say I'm really grateful that Afluencer exists, because I found that those requests started going away, even though my audience was growing, just because I think it's harder to find people online. I don't know. Maybe it is because of AI. I don't know. I don't know if that answers your question. But.
Right. Yeah. No, that's interesting. And I the feedback I get from the brand standpoint is also similar in terms of reaching out, that when they hop on to Instagram and start DMing potential influencers, it's tricky from their standpoint. I think a lot of the cold outreach, it's not necessarily people like yourself who have worked with brands and done collabs before, and you're a professional, you know how to work with someone and if it's a good fit or not, and maybe what needs to be done to potentially promote the supplement or the product. I think a lot of times there's, with these DMs, they don't necessarily know who's on the other side of it. So yeah, I think from both standpoints, it feels like it's noisier from just the feedback that I get to your point. So in terms of breaking through the noise, I want to talk about your book, because that's a very big effort. It's awesome that you have a book and that you're a published author, and so it's great. Congratulations. Nice. I know it's a thankless task in terms of actually making money and being able to market it. And marketing a book is, speaking from my experience, probably the most thankless task you can have, but it's great to have it because it sets you apart from other content creators in that front, right? You're an author. You're a subject matter expert because you have the book. So what's that process been like in terms of getting that out there, getting it written, getting it published, and then also trying to sell a few copies?
Wow. Well, thank you, Brett. I really appreciate it. It sounds like you're an author too. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I published and a co-author, luckily. Yeah. So we self-published a book in 2019. It's a financial book, and we were fortunate. We had a good audience to sell it to in terms of getting it out. But it's funny because I pride myself on doing online marketing, and I did everything that I could think of and more in terms of trying to promote a book, and nothing can nothing even breaks even. Like you're writing a $3 check to lose $1 on the book sales. Actually, the only thing that I found that kind of works is influencers. So that's all we do now is we just do collabs to promote the book, and then you can get some good reviews on Amazon and Goodreads. So that's kind of our thing in terms of promoting the book. I've given up on everything else. And we had a book marketing agency, and they sold books, but the problem is I had to write them like a $10,000 check for $3,000 worth of profit. You know what I mean? So it's one of those where, it's okay to get the ball rolling, but it was very tricky and challenging to find other book buyers out there. It's just, in my experience, I'm glad we have it, but it was very much from a money-making standpoint, it was a loser. So you have other ways to monetize your brand and yourself. I think it makes sense to do it. And I'll probably be dumb enough to write another one on influencer marketing, hopefully next year. But now, I have no delusion of making money on that. It's more of a subject matter expertise. So anyway, interested to hear your experience.
Yeah, I totally understand that, relate to it. You could leverage it. It could be a bonus for a course or a bonus in some other way. It's also a good calling card. I would say that I've also heard, and this is what I'm starting to do more, I'm kind of doing a relaunch of advertising it and promoting it. I feel like I felt like I tried the first time, but I mean, my story sounds similar to yours. So, and I published it in 2016. And then every year that went by, I was like, this really isn't taking off, is it? Even though I'm getting good reviews, and it sounds like you were too.
It's funny how the reviews don't seem to, I always thought once we got to a critical mass in reviews, it would start to click. And here we are almost at 700, and there's no, it almost doesn't matter. It's interesting.
Well, I've actually heard this over and over again, that podcasts can really help to do interviews. So I'm going to do more podcast interviews. However, I am working with a PR agency to do more. I'm working on getting media interviews, because if you think about it, I actually heard that even people that are promoting movies, if you don't promote the movie and you're an actor, like a star, and you don't promote your own movie, the movie's going to tank, or it's not going to reach people. So everything is about promotion. And so I'm working now on doing more media. Podcasts, I think, is the easiest thing to do. And I still will request reviews and create content around my book. But I think that it's just doing a ton of media. And, I think it's hit or miss whether or not it takes off, but I will never regret writing it. It took me 10 years to write. It was a labor of love. And the reviews that come in, they make it worth it, or the emails that I get from someone that says, I have the same situation that you do, or something similar, and this helped me. Like, that alone almost makes it worth it. But it can be a calling card too. So it can get your foot in the door. Even just like, I look at the social media followers, and I view it as very symbiotic. And everyone, it's a very symbiotic relationship, but that can also be a calling card, right? To help you maybe get speaking gigs or attract brands. Like, you never know. Like, I don't think anything is for naught, but I hear you. It's a lot of effort. I don't know as a content creator, I'm not sure I can help not create content.
Right.
Yeah, I think I would only write another book though. I would probably want to write a business book. And down the road, and maybe partnering with some, like something like Entrepreneur Magazine, or I still have that goal. So maybe down the road, but I would definitely need the time and energy, and know that it's just its own labor of love.
Right. Yeah. That's a great way of looking at it. And while we do have you on our media here outlet, the book is called The Memory of Health, and it's available on Amazon. Is that?
It is. Yeah. Yes. It's available on Amazon, and you can also read it as an ebook on Amazon. If you have Kindle Unlimited, you can add it to your queue, and then it's in color that way. And then you can also get the physical book in color on lulu.com. That's where I published it. So I did self-publish it, but I tried to make it bookstore quality, and lulu.com is really good they use the same printing presses that a lot of the big publishers do. So yeah, and I worked with a book designer, and so a book, an editor and book cover designer, and so it's definitely on Amazon. Thank you, Brett. I appreciate it.
Excellent. The Memory of Health. Go on Amazon, buy it, get it on your Kindle. Do both. Get the e-version, get the physical copy. Thanks, Edie. So we'll get you out of here on this one. Then what's looking ahead for you here in 2024 in terms of promoting the memory of health? We've got your main site is at My Daily Well. Just take us through the Edie empire as we head into the new year here.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah. So I'm actually growing more of my social media. I'm branching out I finally got on TikTok. I wasn't really sure about that at first, but I'm going to do that more because I think there are so many people on there and it seems like it does really well. And my YouTube is growing and Instagram are growing. So I'm working on both of those. On YouTube, yes, I have a few brands, but the other one that's kind of all encompassing is called My Daily Well. And that's to help people improve their overall energy and well-being. And so I'm working on getting to the point where I can, if I have enough followers, you can obviously offer products, whether it's on YouTube or Instagram, or TikTok. So Pinterest, I have that's doing pretty well too. But I'm also looking to, of course, I would always love to work with brands. I used to work in the natural foods industry. So I used to work for a lot of the big brands in that industry. I love them. Any brand that's into like health or wellness or self-care, but business brands too. I'm studying for an MBA and I work with startups, so I do have that business hat on too. And I love to inspire people that way. And I'm looking to, like you were talking about with your book, or also social media, kind of leveraging all of that to get into speaking and doing webinars. Don't rule out anything that you've worked on. I think you can definitely leverage it. So, but I'm always looking to work with brands, even sponsorships, things like that.
Excellent. That's great. We'll get the link to your Afluencer profile right below the podcast here so that brands can invite you to their collabs or health, wellness, fitness, self-care brands, business brands. Heads up. We'll get the link so you can invite Edie. And then Edie, just give us the socials then one more time. So we got your YouTube at My Daily Well.
Yes.
Same on Instagram. Is that your TikTok as well?
Yes, I believe TikTok is also My Daily Well. On Facebook, the big one is Chronic Fatigue Support. I do have My Daily Well on there as well. But if anyone is looking for support and they have chronic fatigue for any type of reason, we have a really big community on a page and also in a private group. Those are, Pinterest is My Daily Well. You can also find me just as Edie Summers on there. I have some personal accounts on there as well. Thank you so much, Brett. I really appreciate your time today.
Yeah, thank you, Edie. Yeah, thanks for hopping on. It's been really fun to go run through the gamut with you in terms of content creation. It's been awesome.
Likewise. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Yeah, you bet. Thanks again.